very similar coming down to the medical reports, the injury reports. And because of that, I'm making what I feel is the safer pick and taking the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that has won their last 11 games in a row, as opposed to the team that's lost, I'm sure 2 of their last 4, if not worse, and are really banged up. So there you go. We already discussed the Seahawks advancing to play the Carolina Panthers, being the 6th seed and the Panthers being the 1 seed. That's insane. That should be your NFC Championship game. Holy cow. Well, not necessarily. Because technically there are 3 teams, I think, that are worthy, have been worthy for a long time this season of being the best team in the NFC and consequently the best team in the NFL. And that would be the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Panthers. The Seahawks are just a tough team to beat. They're built to win. They're so talented. They're so athletic. And they've got the experience. They are champions. They know what it takes. And with how last year ended and how some of the first half of this season especially played out for them with their struggles and issues and whatnot, you don't think that they're as motivated and hungry as they've ever been to get back to that Super Bowl and win it and avenge what happened last year? I really feel like that's what's happening after watching the Vikes game unfold. I do feel like there is a little bit of, not by any means divine intervention, but just to put it into words, the football gods, they catch the breaks, for whatever reason. Whenever there's something that could go either way, or something that just has to happen in order for them to win, whether it's recovering an onside kick or like last year, or having a kicker miss a 27-yard potential game winner like this year, just for whatever reason, luck seems to be on their side. And to their credit, they always put themselves in a position where something could happen. They play till the end of the game like as good as any team on any level that I've ever seen. A full 60 minutes of playing the game. So it just, it's really hard to pick against Seattle. However, they weren't all that impressive last week, but the conditions for the game will be significantly better this week, and I think that played a big part. And it's also going to be interesting to see if Beast Mode decides that he feels up to playing this week, since he was able to practice fully last week, took all the reps, and then just said, nope, I guess I don't actually feel up to playing, so I'm not going to come with. See you guys. I don't expect to ever see him play for the Seahawks again. It was on him this last time. I feel from now on it's going to be on the Seahawks, but it just, if something derails them, I think it would be internal issues regarding that, more so than anything that happens actually on the field. Because when it comes to playing the game of football, they're just better than everyone else at it, period. Like, sorry, but Richard Sherman's right. Like, I don't hate to sound like Richard Sherman, actually. I love Richard Sherman. But to sound like Richard Sherman, unintentionally and intentionally, they're just better at it than everyone. So as long as insanely crazy things aren't going on, like, making the worst play call ever when you've almost got the game won. That's the correct way to think of it and look at it, going back an hour and a half, by the way. Or having some kind of internal team combustion, as a result of, things that are going on between players and ownership and coaches and things like that, a la Beast Mode. Those are the only ways I see Seattle really losing, and that's nothing, not to take away anything from how good/great both Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals are and have been this season. But I think that's what's got to happen to take the Seahawks out. So keep an eye on the Marshawn Lynch situation. It doesn't really matter whether or not he plays. I think him not playing is better than him playing, honestly. But just keep an eye on if that situation becomes toxic in any way. If it does before game time, then I'm picking the Panthers. If it doesn't, I'm picking the Seahawks to make it to another NFC Championship game by beating the 15-1 Carolina Panthers, who are dinged up. Jonathan Stewart, key offensive piece, is hurt. They have little to no offensive weapons. Cam Newton is not the MVP. He has had a very overrated season because of his team's win totals and because of, which is directly related to the touchdown totals he's been a part of. He threw 35 touchdown passes. He ran for 10 touchdowns. That's fantastic. That's incredible. That's great, okay? And he threw like 10 or 11 picks. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. Every other passing statistic he has is terrible. Just awful. Stinks. Not good at all. Either mediocre or bottom 5 of the entire freaking league. Dude completed less than 60% of his passes. Come on, man. Dude has barely more yards than Teddy Bridgewater, who barely broke 3,000 in a league where 12 people broke 4,000 yards this year. Come on, man. Also, the Panthers players, outside of Cam Newton in college, and along with the Panthers coaching staff, have not shown that they know what it takes or have what it takes to win a huge must-win playoff game, crunch time against, one of the best. And that's exactly what's going on. Seahawks have shown that they have proven they can do that. Panthers or anyone on the Panthers have not. So, like I said, without some internal combustion on the Seahawks part, I'm picking the Seahawks. Fairly confidently. That being said, the Seahawks have not played their best football 2 of the last 3 weeks, 2 of their last 3 games. And Carolina is an extremely good team that only lost 1 game all season with the best defense in all of football, as you'll find out in a moment here when I reveal my Scotty Ball Pro team, my first ever annual Scotty Ball Pro team. But their defense is incredible, and their offense, while it isn't impressive at all at moving the ball in general, especially through the air, it's towards the top of the league in rushing yards. But an offense that's really hangs its hat on its ability to score touchdowns, as opposed to field goals. That's the Carolina Panthers' key to success this whole year, because their defense is so outstanding. They're constantly having great field position and time of possession, and which wears down a frickin' defense and makes things easier as the game goes on. And, all these different elements that work with each other to result in success. And that's what's happened for the Panthers this year. That's the type of team they are. But now that we know that, and we've already discussed what I think about the Seahawks, I think the Seahawks have everything it takes to counter that. I don't think the game being in Carolina makes any difference whatsoever. And like I said, barring, it's going to take internal combustion or, either like personality-wise, primarily is what I'm thinking, or internal combustion as far as personal foul penalties, losing your cool, a la like the Pittsburgh Steelers-Cincinnati game or the Carolina New York Giants game that got Odell Beckham Jr. suspended for the game with the Vikings, against the Vikings earlier this year, that I'm sure everyone remembers yet, hopefully. That's the only way I see him losing, really. Carolina's got a chance, but I'm confidently picking the Seahawks as well. And then our final NFC game features the Packers, who beat the Redskins in a fairly good game. This was a good game. I was happy this game was following the Vikings game, and I looked in the second quarter. I'm pretty sure it was the second quarter, and it was 11-0 Redskins, and I was just like, sweet. At least the Packers are going to lose. I'm going to be a perfect 4 for 4 on picking games this week. And awesome, no big deal. Whatever. Vikings, it wasn't their year anyway, and next year it might be. So, but then, of course, the Redskins have to be the Redskins, and the Packers have to be the Packers, and the Packers come back and get the lead. Then the Redskins come back and get the lead back again, and then the Packers regain the lead and never look back, and ended up, it was like I don't remember it exactly, it was like a 32-18, or, a 30-something to 18 or 20, somewhere in there was your final score. Pretty sure it was 18 what the Redskins finished with. But so, final score ended up being a good 2-possession or slightly more game. But in all reality, the first 3 quarters of it was very entertaining and much more competitive and back and forth. Packers still didn't look all that impressive in the victory. However, they did look, semi-improved. They were slightly healthier on the offensive line, which is a big issue for them. However, they lost Devontae Adams now. It doesn't look like he's going to play their wide receiver, and their wide receiver depth in general without Jordy Nelson. Now I want to say James Jones is banged up, and there's one other guy that I know is out as well, where it's pretty much Randall Cobb and nobody for a receiving core for them to go along with an offensive line that has key pieces out and other key pieces back in, but still with, hampering injuries. Playing on the road against who I said all year, really just up until the last month or so, I kind of realized that it's either them or the Seahawks. But for the vast majority of the year, and still possibly now, like I said, they're 1A and 1B. I've never came off of their bandwagon, for the record. You know if you're a regular listener, is the Arizona Cardinals. They're the only team in the league that's top 5. Or no, well, Seattle and Arizona, I want to say. They're both top 5 offense and top 5 defense. And the Cardinals have had a great freaking year. They've got a lot of veterans, but none of their veterans really have championship experience. So if it comes down to, which I believe it will, by the way, I'm picking the Cardinals to stomp the Packers, very similar to the way they did a few weeks ago in the regular season in Arizona. We've already seen this game. There really isn't a whole lot about it that's changed, going into it this time, other than it's the playoffs. And the Packers quarterback and coaching staff and some other players have championship success, whereas no one really on the Cardinals side does. That's your one thing, is Cardinals are still the Cardinals and the Packers are still the Packers. It could come down to that, where it's similar to the Vikings-Seahawks game from last week in those regards, as well as the Bengals-Steelers game, possibly, I think, would be a better example. But I'm very confidently picking the Arizona Cardinals to prove me right that they, along with the Seattle Seahawks, are and have been the 2 best teams in the NFC all year, and are, we're getting the best teams, not just the best teams right now, playing in the conference championship. Again, a quick reminder on my picks for this week: Cardinals, Seahawks, Chiefs, Broncos. All right, almost done with football, and then almost done with NFL football. Oh my gosh, my Atlanta. And then we got to squeeze in. We got to make a quickie out of the epic college football national championship. Man, curse you Vikings. College football fans, don't be mad at me for this week's episode. Be mad at the Vikings. And of course, with college football being done and the Vikings being done, we can always revisit the college championship game in a little more detail next week, as be easier for me to research it too when I'm not breaking down all this frickin' Vikings film every dang week. Alright, so the big A topic nationally in sports as well as NFL football is the city of Los Angeles is getting a pro football team. I want to say it begins immediately starting next season. If not, it begins the season after that, but I'm pretty sure that with what everyone was saying, how it all looked like it ended. No, it's immediately. They've played their last game. The St. Louis Rams have played their last game in St. Louis, And starting next year, they will be playing their game where the USC Trojans